Are you getting tired of games with so many rules and overwhelmed with options and procedures? Maybe it's time to throw away the 300-page rulebook and play a TTRPG that fits on a single sheet of paper. I recently had the pleasure of playing a game of Down We Go with some friends. Actually, I'll have a link down in the description to the live stream. We streamed the game. I played this character called Ham Duckfoot. It was a crazy fun time, and I was blown away at how quickly we made characters and jumped straight into the game, and how much it felt like playing a game of D&D, only the rules were on a single sheet of paper. Actually, like half of a sheet of paper. It was a truly minimal game, but the experience was not minimal at all. So one of the really awesome, fun things about these minimal TTRPGs is that there's not a lot of rules to learn. In fact, most of it comes down to just figuring out what the resolution mechanic is. In Down We Go's case, you just roll a d20 and add the level, or it's kind of like the ability modifier. And the really cool thing is there's 4 abilities that kind of dictate what kind of roll you're making and what kind of bonus you get, and also what kind of class you are and what kind of abilities and how many abilities you have. And that also dictates your hit points and defense score. I'm rattling off a lot of words here, but really it's not complicated, super easy to make a character and jump right in and start playing. And I think what's really interesting about this minimal game design is it's just as much about as what is written in the rules as what's left out of the rules. So big focus in Down We Go is these player abilities, and that's kind of what's telling the players what they're going to be doing in the game. So if you're playing a sneaky character, you're going to be backstabbing and lockpicking. If you're playing a mystical character, you're going to be casting sleep and creating light, shooting magic missiles. Or if you're a bloodthirsty character like Ham Duckfoot, you're going to be raging and cleaving enemies with your axe. But at the same time, Down We Go isn't super focused on managing inventory like a lot of the other OSR style games. So it mentions that you can carry 10 items, but there's no list of items. There's no weapon damage or armor resistance or anything like that. You could just say, yeah, I think my character would be carrying a torch and wearing a cloak and have plenty of rations to eat. Now, I absolutely loved playing Down We Go. There's a link down in the description where you can pick up the game, check it out for yourself. But I thought it would be super fun to take a look at a few other minimally designed TTRPGs and see how these games that are super easy to learn, super easy to jump in and start creating stories with differ from one another. Okay, let me show you Thome by Suikun. I'm probably saying that very wrong. Gabriel Antonio has made this awesome game. This is my kind of game right here. So the resolution mechanic is pretty simple. You have 3 stats here. You have strength, dexterity, wit, and you roll a d6, add that modifier to it. It also has the awesome thing that Tunnel Goons, one of my favorite games, uses. So if you have like a weapon or an item that would benefit, you get to add another +1. And you're trying to roll a 5 or a 6, 3 or a 4. Did I say d6? You roll a d6, add your modifier. You're trying to get a 5 or a 6. A 3 or a 4 gets you success but a complication. And 1 to 2 is a disaster, a failure. There's no HP or anything like that. It all comes from your stats. And there's all these damage and condition modifier things. Like most fantasy games, you got a list of weapons and equipment and tools. And then there's a whole section on spell casting. You kind of roll your spells and make up the effects. But it's cool because you can imbue your catalyst, so you can like put spells into your magical staff or tome and kind of save them for later. And magical items can have these unique traits. So if we're looking at the rule book here, you have one of the pages is the rules for resolving conflict and combat and equipment, and then another one of the pages is all spellcasting. So the spellcasting stuff is kind of important to the game, just based on how much space it takes up in the rulebook. Now, these core sort of mechanical things are very interesting, but I think what gives Thome the flavor that I love so much is the character creation brochure. So this game is really just 2 front and back sheets of paper that can be turned into these pamphlets. We flip over, we get to see the process for creating a character. And I should say, I just love the design of this game. It's simple with these wonderful icons, but super easy to find what you need. And really, this is where the flavor of the game comes in, because all of the ancestries and then the classes on the other side of the paper, these are the things that are telling the players what they're going to be doing. So, if you're an underfolk, you might have stone skin, so you have advantage on actions related to resist bleeding and piercing effects, or you might be squeezy and you can fit through tight spaces half your size. Or if you're a giant folk, you could have regeneration or a voice ability where your roar or growl can intimidate your opponents. Beast folk can shapeshift, little folk can be hexproof, grave folk can be cursed or take on an ethereal form. When you make a character, you're picking an ancestry, choosing 3 of the fates, and one cool thing is you can choose 2 fates from the ancestry that you pick, but then you can pick from other ones as well. And then you pick your background: thief, knight, warrior, cleric, mage, or druid. They have skills and talents. Skills are kind of like your proficiency, and talents are like your abilities. And really, this game has all the stuff that I'm interested in when I'm playing a fantasy game. It's super easy to run. It has the mechanics that ask players to be creative with how they solve problems, and it gives players lots of options so their characters can feel unique from each other. I just love this kind of game. I'll have a link to the itch page where you can pick it up, and actually there's like stretch goals on the itch page. So if enough of you watching this video go pick it up, I think it's only $5. We can unlock more pamphlets, like a spell pamphlet or a setting or a bestiary. Definitely go check out Thome. I think this is just the perfect minimal game. Okay, next up we have Stravagante by Penflower Inc. Similar to Thome, there is a rule book and a character creation book, and then there's a bunch of extra fun stuff. Character sheets are very simple. There's a few different ways of printing out the game, but I chose to do these single page booklets. So this is actually a single sheet of paper that is double-sided, and then it folds into a nice little pocket booklet. So I wanted to look at Stravagante because I think this is a good comparison to Thome. It's a similar game. In fact, Stravagante is listed as an inspiration for Thome, but I think it's really interesting how these games differ. So in this game, you have 4 stats: wit, dexterity, stamina, and sociability. When you make a character in Stravagante, you roll 4d6, and then you split up the sum of your roll between these 4 different stats. And the numbers associated with stat aren't like ability modifiers, they're actually EP, so they're points that you can spend to do an action. So if you want to jump over a chasm, you could spend 1 dexterity and just do it. There's also a luck roll mechanic, so if you don't have the EP to spend, you can roll luck and see what happens. Similarly, there's advantage and disadvantage, and there's no HP, so when you run out of EP points, that's when your player falls unconscious or dies, depending on the game's tone. PCs have skills and flubs, so it's really leaning into the role-playing story side of things. Just little mechanics like adding flubs, the things that your character is bad at, adds a lot to the game. There's a list of conditions, and then the cool thing is there are complications that are really there for GM-less play. So you can have just a group of players, and when complications come up as you're building the story together, you just roll on these tables and see what happens. There's an armor and equipment section to make things a little less dangerous, and then let's flip this book inside out here and reform it. Here is another section that I think is very cool. and says a lot about the game. You know, it's just one sentence, one little mechanic that says so much about how this game plays. So the toll of battle, every time a PC seriously injures or kills someone in game, their max social stat goes down by 1 EP. And this is the type of thing that gets your players to try and think about non-violent actions. And if that's the type of game you're looking for, I think Stravagante is an excellent choice for a minimal, more cozy style of game. Similar to Thome, there is the spell casting system where you roll and sort of make your own spell. There's rules for resting, progression. There's a little bit of advice for playing with a guide and without a guide. Really, really cool. Let's take a look at the character creation guide. Super simple, like I explained earlier, but same kind of thing. You have these cool kin. There's grave kin, cave kin, little kin, middle kin, large kin, and beast kin. They all have skills and traits so your players can feel like their characters are a little bit different. And then if we flip the book inside out, I'll just show you here, there's some class stuff: warrior, minstrel, knight, priest, bandit, and mage, some equipment and treasure, and even some example characters. I just love Penflower's illustrations. I'm going to link their channel below as well. Amazing drawing videos. I could watch them draw forever. Speaking of, there is this Caster's Bay pamphlet. This is like a setting pamphlet, and I just love this map so much. It looks like Super Mario 3 map mixed with fantasy stuff. If you need a little setting, this is a great way to sort of introduce players to the game. It's got this sort of sleeping, imprisoned god that's in the middle of the bay. There's also a pamphlet of prompts. I think this is a really great pamphlet, especially if you're playing GM-less. You know, this will really help if you need to come up with an NPC or a location. You kind of have everything covered, like an oracle pamphlet for GM-less play. So that's Stravagante. Excellent presentation. Love the artwork. Super cool tone. I'm really interested in this EP mechanic just to see how much, you know, not having to roll, just these auto succeed on things. It's just such an interesting idea. I feel like it would just make for a much friendlier, easygoing, stress-free kind of game. And I think that's super cool. Go check out Stravagante. Link is down below. Now let's move in the opposite direction and talk about Deathbringer. I had the pleasure of having dinner with Professor DM at Gen Con, and as soon as I got back, I was like, okay, I gotta finally check out Deathbringer. And this is an absolutely wonderful pared down version of D&D. It's just a single pamphlet, you know, front and back, single page here. You've got your regular 6 core stats. You roll a d20, you add your modifier. You have HP and defense, like your AC. And this is a really good example of how just a single little paragraph says so much about the type of game that it is. So it's all characters are human. No one can see in the dark. No clerics. The gods of Deathbringer are indifferent. Spellcasters have been hunted to near extinction. So, you know, if Stravagante was a friendly, cozy game, and lots of the language in that game talk about, you know, the type of game you play, it kind of leaves it open to you to decide. Deathbringer's like, no, you can't see in the dark. There's no clerics. There's stuff like this corruption mechanic. Actually, this is kind of similar to Stravagante. When you commit an evil deed or roll a nat 1, you go up on your corruption, and when you fill up this corruption bar, you become a monster. The same way that in Stravagante, you reduce your social ability. I just think this is so cool. It says so much about the type of game that you're going to be playing. There's also this really wonderful Deathbringer dice mechanic. So if you want to play a classless game, you replace with this Deathbringer dice. So you get an extra d6 per level at the start of every game, and then you can spend those Deathbringer dice to add to hit roll. You can inflict more damage, or you can absorb damage. Or you can play as some of the different classes. You have Deathbringer, Grim Scribe, Scoundrel, Witch Hunter, and Plague Doctor. Again, the flavor is all here. There's even this background and random misery table that you can add to your character. I just think this is so awesome. If you're looking for a more grim, dark, almost feels kind of like heavy metal style game, Deathbringer is super awesome. Like the other games, links down in the description. Go check it out. It's super cheap and it's really amazing how much fun and how much game you can cram into just a single double-sided sheet of paper. Okay, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some of these games. I really believe that you can have just as much fun at the table playing a game that comes in a tiny little rule book made out of a folded single sheet of paper as you do with a game that comes with multiple 300-page rule books. You know, when it comes down to it, it's all about hanging out with your friends, going on an adventure, and creating a fun story. And these minimal RPGs can really get at that experience super quickly and super easily. So yeah, I hope this video inspired you to check out some of these games and give them a shot, play them yourself, see what you think. If you'd like to support the channel and help me make these videos, you can check out my Patreon, where I release monthly adventures and guidebooks, new stuff every month. Or you can check out my online shop. I want to recommend this system-neutral adventure I made called Flick Silverpen's Guide to the Great Goblin Flight. There's a greedy wizard and these ghoul mercenaries and this giant monster called Scud Chumble, and of course a bunch of goblins that are trying to blow stuff up. Super fun adventure that would work great with any of the games that I've mentioned in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!